The restaurant buzzed with soft jazz, clinking glasses, and the buttery smell of fresh-baked bread. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, scattering gold across the polished marble tables of Lamazone, Manhattan's temple of fine dining. But for Tina, the only black waitress on staff, this wasn't just another busy afternoon. It was the day the wrong man decided to underestimate the wrong woman. Welcome to Voices Unchained, where every story burns with truth. By the time the sun set over the city skyline, someone who thought he owned the world was about to get humbled right in front of everyone. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Tina had been working double shifts for weeks. Her mother's hospital bills had stacked up higher than her paycheck, and her younger brother's college tuition was due next month. But no matter how heavy life got, she showed up, polished shoes, clean apron, and that quiet dignity that made even exhaustion look graceful. Still, she felt the stares. Lamazone was the kind of place where rich people came to show off their wealth, and servers were expected to blend into the background. For Tina, blending in was impossible. She stood out the second she walked in the room. Some guests smiled politely. Others didn't. That afternoon, a group of businessmen swept in, filling the air with cologne, ego, and the scent of power. At the center of it all sat Carl Schneider, a German billionaire investor known for crushing deals and people with the same cold precision. He had that kind of confidence that made everyone else shrink. His silver watch gleamed under the lights as if to remind the room what power looked like. Tina picked up her tray, adjusted her apron, and walked toward their table. She could feel their eyes scanning her like a background prop. She greeted them with a polite smile and fluent English. But the moment she turned to set down their drinks, she heard it. Carl's voice, sharp and amused, rolling off a few sentences in fluent German. "Look at her hands," he murmured, assuming she wouldn't understand. "Clumsy. Poor people always try to act graceful. It never works." The table erupted in laughter. Loud. Cruel. Tina froze mid-step. The words hit her like a slap. Because what Carl didn't know was that Tina understood every single word. Before life threw her behind an apron, she'd been a language student, fluent in German, French, and Spanish. She once dreamed of being a translator, traveling the world. But dreams don't pay hospital bills. She wanted to walk away. Pretend she hadn't heard it. But something inside her, the part that refused to stay silent anymore, wouldn't let it slide. She turned to him slowly, calm and composed, and in flawless German said, "Respect doesn't come from wealth, and grace doesn't come from your suit. Maybe next time try learning some manners instead of assuming who understands you." The laughter died instantly. The entire restaurant went silent. Forks froze midair. Carl's smirk faltered. His friends stared at their plates like guilty schoolboys. Tina didn't yell, didn't curse. She just looked him dead in the eye, set the drinks down gently, and walked away. For the rest of the meal, Carl said nothing. The arrogance that entered with him had vanished. Every waiter in the room felt it. Something had shifted. When the check came, he asked to see the manager. Everyone assumed the worst. Tina's heart raced as she was called over. But instead of a complaint, Carl stood up. His tone was softer now, his accent heavier. "Tina," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology." The room stopped again. The billionaire was apologizing. He admitted he'd judged her unfairly, forgotten what respect meant. Then he switched to English, just to make sure everyone heard. "Thank you for reminding me," he said. He placed a thick envelope on the table, a massive tip, and left without another word. Tina stood frozen. She didn't smile, she didn't cry. She just exhaled, the kind of breath that comes after holding your pride under pressure for too long. Around her, whispers rippled, but this time they weren't mocking. They were in awe. Days turned into weeks. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said she got fired. Others said the billionaire sent flowers. But what actually came was far better. One morning, the manager handed her a letter. Handwritten, expensive paper, signed by Carl Schneider. He thanked her again, not just for her words, but for her courage. He admitted that her calm defiance had forced him to confront something he'd buried long ago, the boy he used to be before money made him cruel. He revealed he'd grown up poor himself and that somewhere along the line he'd traded humility for pride. "You reminded me," the letter said, "that dignity has no price tag." Enclosed was a scholarship and sponsorship offer, a new educational fund in her name for students who couldn't afford to finish school, and he wanted her to be the first recipient. Tina's hands trembled as she read. The same language that once insulted her was now rewriting her life. She applied, she got accepted. And that fall, Tina walked into a university classroom again, not as a waitress, but as a future translator. 2 years later, Lamazone looked different. Same chandeliers, same soft jazz, but tonight, it wasn't hosting another dinner for the rich. It was hosting Carl Schneider's annual charity gala. And the keynote speaker? You guessed it, Tina. She walked in wearing a sleek black dress and confidence that turned heads. Her old coworkers whispered from the corner, "That's her. That's Tina." When she took the stage, Carl stood up and applauded first. The man who once mocked her now honored her. She smiled. 2 years ago, she began, I was serving drinks right here when someone tried to remind me of my place. But life has a funny way of flipping the script, doesn't it? Laughter rolled through the crowd, warm, genuine. She continued, that day taught me that kindness isn't weakness, it's power in disguise. Sometimes it only takes one moment of courage to wake up the humanity someone else forgot they had. By the time she finished, the room was on its feet. Not because she was rich, but because she was real. Later, as the gala ended, Tina stepped outside under the same glowing city lights where her story began. She looked up and smiled, not at what she'd gained, but at what she'd reclaimed, her voice. And somewhere across town, in a penthouse overlooking the skyline, Carl sat by the window with that same letter framed on his desk, the one that changed them both. To the woman who reminded me that wealth means nothing without heart. Because justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it walks in heels, speaks calmly, and leaves a billionaire speechless. If this story gave you chills or reminded you that karma's got perfect timing, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs hope today, and don't forget to subscribe to Voices Unchained. Because tomorrow's story? Oh, you won't believe it.